Scott, I want to start with you because last hour you were saying basically that you think that the Biden administration has loused this whole thing up or just not addressing what's happening at the border in any kind of effective way. What do you want President Biden to do? I mean, again, the situation at the border appears to be so overrun, so complicated. What today can President Biden do?
Well, he said in his statement, and the White House is saying that they think Republicans should work with Democrats. And I agree. And the Republicans who just took over the U.S. House unveiled a framework for immigration reform in December. It includes finishing the barrier system that started under Trump that Biden paused, recruiting and retaining our great Border Patrol agents. If you can't detain someone for the duration of their illegal stay here, we should turn them away. Asylum reform, targeting the cartels. There's an entire framework that Republicans laid out just a couple of weeks ago that they plan to pursue. Now, will the Senate Democrats pick up on that? Will the Biden White House pick up on that? I want to see Joe Biden put his money where his mouth is. He says he wants bipartisan cooperation. The Republicans have a plan. They laid it out. Maybe that's a starting point.
Paul, what are the chances that the Democrats would go along with how Scott just phrased it?
Well, Democrats want a solution, or they want at least to address the problem. Republicans want chaos. They want chaos at the border because they believe it helps them politically. Ever since Donald Trump slithered down that escalator, they've been demagoguing immigration. There is a crisis at the border, though. There is. And I actually think the executive branch, President Biden in this case, doing everything he can. He's plussed up the Border Patrol. He's adding even more agents now. They've stopped record amounts of fentanyl and record numbers of people. The courts are doing all they can. In fact, they're doing more than they're constitutionally allowed to do. Even Justice Gorsuch pointed that out today. They've gone beyond their role. Congress has to fix this. And the reason Congress hasn't fixed it is the Republicans don't want to.
I know. Paul, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to address what Scott said. Scott, I know the Democrats always say that Republicans want this as a talking point, and Republicans always say that Democrats don't show up at the table. But what about what Scott just said, that they've laid out this plan, but I don't think, would Democrats go along with continuing the border wall? Would they go along with everything that Scott just said?
The Democrats have been working on this for years, and it has been at every critical juncture, the Republicans that have tanked it. Now, look, there's some hope. It's not coming from the press release that Kevin McCarthy's aides put out. It comes actually from the Senate side. Kyrsten Sinema, who was a Democrat until about 15 minutes ago, working with Tom Tillis, a North Carolina Republican. And it's not comprehensive at all, but it's a good start. Here's what they would do. Increase Border Patrol security, increase security at the border, reform asylum, which is really where the reason a lot of these folks are entering, and then clear a path to citizenship for these dreamers. It's not everything, but it's a good start. A lot of Democrats, Dick Durbin, the number 2 Democrat in the Senate, and others have joined on to this. The only Republican besides Tillis who I know is on it is Roy Blunt, and he's going to retire in a few days.
Ron, you've seen this movie many times over. What are your thoughts tonight?
There's no secret Dakota ring here, Allison. I mean, I've been covering this since the early 1990s, since Prop 187. And the border is a problem that is at best managed, not solved. But to get a better handle on it, the ingredients of a solution have been the same for 20 years. More money for border enforcement and more money for the asylum system to clean up this huge backlog in asylum claims. Some path to legal status for the people who are here illegally, and then something that deals with the future flow of workers after this previous decade, 2010 to 2020, was the smallest population growth in American history, except for the Depression. The Senate passed that kind of package in 2006 on a bipartisan basis with Mitch McConnell among those voting for it. Under George W. Bush, the Senate passed that package again, similar in 2013 on a bipartisan basis under Barack Obama with Marco Rubio, among others, voting for it. Each time the Republican-controlled House would not take it up. And if we are going to find a true solution that more effectively controls the problem, those are the ingredients. It's not like a mystery or that there's a hidden answer. In fact, even when Trump was president, the Senate Democrats offered him a deal to finish his border wall in return for DACA legalization, and it ran aground when Stephen Miller and others in the White House demanded cuts in legal immigration, even amid the slowest population growth in any decade since, except for the Depression. So, we're going to keep banging against each other, red states against the federal government, Democrats against Republicans, indefinitely. until there's sort of an awareness that the only solution is one that is comprehensive, and you can only get there with both parties doing it. Neither side can do this politically on their own.
Instead, a new Congress starts next week. I mean, just because something hasn't worked for decades doesn't mean that it won't work. Is there any appetite for this?
I mean, Ron lays out the kind of mountain of kind of political will that would have to happen for this new Congress to take this up. And that's because the distance between where the Republican base is and where the Democratic base on this issue is massive. And so politically, there is just no real appetite yet to find that sense of common ground. And the people, we should say, that are hurt most for that are the actual migrants involved with the kind of chaotic ping-ponging back and forth of policy. But we can't, this is a Republican Congress coming in that can't agree on the speaker yet to paper over the divisions within their caucus. With an issue like immigration, which not only has divisions among the Republican caucus, but also among the Democratic one, it is a real tough challenge to see the path forward for this politically. I mean, I think back to the Democratic primary years ago in 2020 to even nominate Biden, and it's not as if those candidates were laying out affirmative immigration policies. To the folks' point on the panel, they have been running from this issue. And so that is because there's not a real political will there to do much of anything about it.
Scott, I want to drill down on a couple of things that keep coming up that people offer as solutions. And you mentioned it, which is finishing basically a border wall. And then Democrats often talk about legal status for Dreamers. How do either of those solve the 1.6 million asylum applications that are pending right now that are glutting the system? It's a 7-time increase in asylum cases over 2012. 3 out of 10 of them are children. Let's start with yours, the border wall. How does that stop the influx of people that are coming from countries like Nicaragua with, abject poverty and crime?
Well, it doesn't fix the backlog in the system. What it does do, if you go ahead and complete the barriers like Arizona outgoing Governor Doug Ducey tried to do, it does stop people from walking across the border. I mean, you have people coming into the United States across, places like the Yuma Gap in Arizona. So that's one thing.
Yeah, but that's not the big problem. I mean, the big
docket,
problem is the 1.6 million asylum applications that our system can't handle.
I think they're all big problems. I think the backlog's a problem, and I think the daily influx is a problem. And I do think fixing the Dreamers situation is also a good thing to do, but that also doesn't address the people who are showing up every single day. So there's multifaceted issues here. And all those things, I think, wind up in the discussion around a possible deal because it's what someone wants, or it's the most important thing for some political constituency. So you wind up tacking it on. But it strikes me that the most important thing you could possibly do is stop the influx today, get a handle on what we have in terms of the backlog, and stop adding to it. And that, I think, is the fundamental disagreement between the parties. The Republicans want to put a stop to everybody coming in and being added to the asylum backlog, and the Democrats just say, well, let's just do the paperwork faster. And that is a huge gulf between the two parties.
Paul, wasn't it, Scott's saying that he thinks that a wall would help. Wasn't there a time that Democrats supported a wall?
Oh, a wall makes sense in some places, and it's moronic in others. And that's what Mr. Trump didn't understand because he's Donald Trump. But Scott, brother, you're not quite right about this. Okay, I don't want to be mean, but the wall doesn't stop an asylum seeker. See, an asylum seeker is someone who claims a well-founded fear of persecution. So she presents herself to the Border Patrol. She's not trying to avoid anything. She's not stopping at a wall. She's going to the gate. She's going to the Border Patrol and saying, here I am, take me in. And these are people fleeing murderous communist dictatorships. They're fleeing narco trafficker gangs that have taken over in many of these areas in Central America. The kind of folks, I mean, you'd have to shoot me if it was the only way to feed my family and to protect my children from these gangs or these communist dictators. So fundamentally, we have to have security at the border. By the way, liberals have to say that. Join me, liberals. We have to secure the border. Now, conservatives have to admit that America needs immigrants, and we cannot turn away. We're not going to rip children from their parents anymore the way Mr. Trump did. And we can't turn away people who are going to get shot if they go home by either a communist dictator.
Yes,
or,
I hear you. I hear
narco-terrorist
you,
gang.
Paul. But let's be honest. I mean, I think Scott's point is that of the 1.6 million asylum applications pending, not all of them will be legitimate asylum seekers. I mean, part of the problem with the glut, and I mean, obviously, people who are streaming here from Cuba and Venezuela have a lot to be afraid of, but we can't process that. We don't know if all 1.6 million are legitimate. And by the way, we might not know for years. It's taking, because of the backlog, it's taking like 4.5 years to process some of this. That's
it's
a problem.
4 or 5 year, and a wall won't fix that. More asylum judges will. Faster adjudication, maybe even change the standards. Right now, the standard for decades has been, do you have a well-founded fear of persecution?
Yeah.
And that's always been a pretty sensible standard for America. But if we're being overwhelmed, but Congress has to change that. Joe Biden can't change it, and the Supreme Court can't change it. Congress has to write a new law if they want a new law.